Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. Unfortunately, when I was on the dev server, I pretty much screwed up my timings, which meant that I wasn't able to record some of the vehicles which were new to the game. I also wasn't able to do any of the recording for the testing of the new armor of the rank 6s. We only did some preliminary stuff, and also didn't really get to look at the map. Hopefully, there is a second dev server and I can bring you full footage of those vehicles and also all the rest of the stuff I said. But I think what I'm going to do is give my thoughts and opinions on the vehicles that I missed, but in much more of a casual way. And then if there is a second dev server, then I'll be able to look at them for you. If there isn't one and it comes to live, then look forward to reviews on these vehicles. So the first one we are having a look at is the P40F10. Now this is the new P40 that they're adding to the game, as you can see by the characteristic skin that it has, and also its battle rating. This is 0.3 higher than its P40E counterpart, and it's also sat at rank 2. 6 50 cals, 3 in each wing. It is very, very similar to the other P40E. The only major difference is the engine, which will mean that it will be more competent at its BR. As you go lower in BRs, what you will find is the lower BRs are much more fighting around the 0 to maybe 3,000 meters area. If you ever get above there, generally it's you and maybe a couple of bombers and then maybe a few fighters who decided to climb. And what happens because of that is a lot of fights are focused around the 0 to 2,000 meter area, because if you decide to fight somebody and they are above you, then you will have to dive to try and get away from them, to get speed, to get position, hopefully make them overshoot and then go after them. With the P40F10, what it is a machine equipped with a better engine which will be better at doing that compared to the P40E, and that's why I think it has the upgraded BR. It's going to be interesting to see if it makes that much of a difference for the machine in itself to warrant the BR change. I'm not sure it is. I think it would still be completely fine at 2.7. But it seems like they have a little bit more faith in it than I do. It is lovely to see another P40 in game. This is the third one we have now, after the P40C and the P40E. But personally, I just don't see how it's such a big upgrade over the P40E, especially when I was flying it. The issue is still the rate of climb. Even though it does better at those mid to low altitudes, you still need to get up to those slightly higher altitudes to engage the battle and put yourself into a dominant position. And this still can't do that because of the weight of the machine. So we'll have to see when it comes to live, but I don't know, It's going to be a plane that I enjoy flying. I know for a fact it is. But when it comes to being completely competitive at its BR of 3.0, I can think of a hell of a lot of planes I would rather take over it. So that is the issue I see. The next one that we have is, I suppose we can go to 221. Now, hopefully this is shown on the the change here, because I haven't. Yeah, it is. Okay, lovely stuff. So it works. These are the bomb loads of the P40F10. So we have a 2 100s, 1 500, and also 1 500 and 2 100s. So 2 100s in the wing spars, and then, or not wing spars, but on the wings, and then a middle 500. This will mean that it will be useful in ground forces. Around 3.0, you have a pretty good lineup in America. You're talking about Shermans, at least the early Shermans. You're talking about some of the gun trucks and all of that. So hopefully, with that said, you can run the P40F. It was also the ground belts on the 12.7s are incredibly deadly to stuff like Panzer IVs. You can shoot through the cupola, you can also shoot through the driver's hatch and kill everyone in them, and it is still a competent fighter. So if we see it from a ground realistic point of view, it's much more useful. And this comes to an issue that I've talked about before, the idea of changing BR depending on if you're playing the air side of the game or the ground side of the game. I do think that this machine will be so much better in ground forces than it will in air forces, and therefore should have a different BR for it, maybe 2.7 in air realistic and then 3.0 in ground. Something like that would make a lot more sense to me. Moving on to the next vehicle that we have the P40E1. Now the P40E1 is something we already have in game, which is right here. Now the P40E1 in its entirety has had a model update. Unfortunately, the quality of the video, you may not be able to see it, but overall, the only difference between this and the other one, once again, is the engine. It still struggles against certain aircraft around its BR. It's definitely not the pinnacle of the BR, but it's still fun to fly overall, and you can do really well in it, since it has a lot of ammunition, it has a lot of versatility, it can take a few hits. The engine generally works pretty well. It's just a little bit heavy, once again, compared to other aircraft around the BR, which are just better than it. Moving on, we have the BF-110s. So the BF-110s I should have recorded. I feel very, very bad for not recording them, so that's why I can't wait until they're either in the game or on a second dev server. What we're getting out of these machines, there is 2 new ones, and there is also an updated model of the C4, and the C4 now has changed into the C7, and this, they said in the preliminary patch notes, is just for clarification on the model type, so it seems like they haven't changed anything else about it. What this machine is, and what you'll find, is a twin-engined heavy fighter. Now, when we look at the C7, it is a heavy fighter, but when we look at the G2 and the F2, it seems like they have more specialized roles. So the G2, to me, comparing it to other machines that we have in the game, seems very much like a night fighter. Has a hell of a lot of guns in it, designed to just wreck house on anything that it sees, but the issue is, of course, with it, that getting guns on targets is going to be a bit harder. Now, in Tiger Frost's videos on it, he talked specifically about arcade with it, and I completely agree with him. This machine and the other one, the other BF-110 added, is going to be magnificent in arcade, but in realistic, the C7 still can get guns on target pretty well as long as you have a good approach, but look at stuff like the DOs, the 2117s, the Night Fighter variants, or the Heavy Fighter variants. Now, those are much larger and less maneuverable than the BF-110, but they struggle to get their guns on target at all, unless somebody is silly enough to head on them. So the BF-110 will be a better version of that, but it will all come down to the elevator, and it will all come down to how much energy this thing loses in a turn. Now, when we look at, let's find it, 1042, here we go. When we look at, I am 1 second off, there we go. When we look at what you can actually add to this thing, you can add one 37mm BK 3.7 centimeter or 37mm, or you can add two 20mm MG151s, and then of course all of the bombs and the rockets on top of it. Something that I brought up while I was looking at these aircraft, which is incredibly surprising to me, is you can see that over the last few patches they've been testing and working out how stuff like additional guns is going to work. We saw the last update, a lot of American planes got some 50 cals on them, and also it seems we're just extending and extending on that to make it so these variants of aircraft have more versatility in what they can actually take. Now this, overall, is a really good thing, because it means that you can kind of pick and choose what you're going to use. On the other side of the coin, if you're fighting these things, then it's going to be a lot harder to fight them, because you're not going to be sure if they're carrying bombs, if they're carrying rockets, if they're carrying extra guns, or if they're carrying both. At all times, it's just better to not go in front of this BF-110 because of that. But if we look at the standard armament of this, you're looking at two 30mm MK108s, and this is a battle rating 3.3, remember, and two 20mm MG151s. So the first thing to note there is that's a lot of power. That's a lot of damage. But on top of that, these two types of guns have incredibly different velocities. The MK108s are very much slower than what you would find on the MG151s, So being able to hit a target, what you might be finding is you're leading for one of them, and you're only hitting with one of them because you're not hitting with the other one. So you're gonna have to either separate them out. I'm not even sure if you can, because they're both cannon variants. But you're going to either have to separate them out if you're able to, or you're going to have to, in some way, train yourself to shoot for one of them, or just take people on when you can hit with both, or just waste ammunition. Like, you do have a lot of ammunition to waste, 255 on the 108s, and 750 on the 151, so you're not going to run out of ammunition anytime soon. And also with two secondary MG151s added, with 200 cannons on the underbelly of the thing, or the 37mm, this might be a tank buster. It's going to be interesting to see. I think I would personally still take the bombs if I'm tank busting. Like, you've got to understand, this thing can carry a 1,000-kilo bomb, which is going to be incredibly useful in ground forces. And around about 3.3, you know what there is? The long-barreled 75s from the Germans. And what they're struggling with right now, the Germans around that BR, is some kind of ground attacker, which isn't some meme machine like the HS-129, or is more useful in an aggressive way than a Ju-87. And this BF-110G2 is going to be that. It can carry the 37 to do damage to people. It has access to a bunch of 20s. It all has access to the 1,000 kilo, and it will be able to fight afterwards. It depends. The only thing that it really depends on is the amount of speed and energy and a turn you lose for adding these extra guns. And I think a lot of the time, most people just go without the loads. If they want to use it as a fighter, if it's good enough to. If it's not, then we're just going to see crazy additions to it through the secondary weapons from people. It's a boom or buster when we look at realistic. We either have a vehicle here which is going to do really well in ground forces and then, do okay in air, or it's just going to be a vehicle which overall is going to be absolutely useless because people are just going to out-energy it. And that is the issue with the BF-110C7 right now, which is in the game. Once people figure out that you don't have to head on it, and that it loses a ton of energy after 2 or 3 turns, you can just start running, running circles around it, just like you would with any twin-engine fighter against a monoplane. So the fact that it has a bunch of different secondary armaments is great. It means that it has the ability to do something else instead of just trying dogfight stuff. The issue with that, though, is it might be bad at dogfighting, so therefore you're limited to the roles you can take on the battlefield. The F2, which we will find at 1338. Here we go. This is the F2. And as you can see, it's able to once again have 2 20mm MGs, but these are FFMs, not 151s, and 4 7.92 MG17s with a turret with a 7.92 MG15 machine gun on the back. So the same turret on both, and I have no idea why I decided to stop here on this. Let's find a better one for you. 1404 is what we are doing here. But yeah, when we look at the BF-110 F2, it's obviously some kind of fighter version, or some kind of version which is designed to be much more useful against other fighters instead of a bombing version. Or it's kind of designed, if you look at the weapon loadout, as a Mosquito. The Mosquito has 4 20s, it has 4 7s, and then on this you have something very similar when you add in the extra 20s. The issue is, once again, just with the 30s and 20s on the other variant of the BF-110, muzzle velocity. Now, the 151's the big upgrade over the FFMs when we look at the German 20s, is the fact that you have much higher velocity in the MG151s. So in order to lead with all these 3 separate guns firing at the same time, it's going to be an absolute pain. it's going to be much easier just to fire a few at once. Now, because this thing has less of an armament to start with the 792s instead of the 30s, it's going to be a slightly harder grind. But overall, I think it will be still fine. The issue with this is it's much more designed to be on that fighter role, the PvP, let's go and dogfight role. So, with that said, it may come a cropper if people finally figure out how to deal with aircraft like this and just run circles around them. Just bleed them, keep bleeding, keep turning. Just keep out-energying them. Your energy trade is so much better than on a machine like this. There is no need or requirement to fight it after the first 1 or 2 turns. Just keep doing it and keep running circles around him and make sure that he's losing energy. This is a lower BR than the other variants of the BF-110, so that at least has it going for it. But the tank killing capabilities out of this in ground is so much lesser compared to the other one. We're also going to have to see if it gets an air spawn. Now, this is the big contention for me. If these things get air spawns, they're going to be really good bomber killers, because they have all of the guns they require. The MK108 annihilates any bomber around the 3033 area. And even with the F2 here, with its 220mm, will still be able to do decent damage with the amount of ammo that it has. And on top of that, with the MG151s do exactly the same thing. Just tear apart anything in front of it when it comes to a bomber. And on top of this, you've got to look at the BV238. Now, a lot of people won't think of this, and that's fine. But the BV238 sits around this BR. And with that said, what you might end up having is half German teams again in the air to start with. So you won't have to worry about the P-47 having a spawning in the air and being way higher than you. You'll have to worry about machines like this and machines like the BV238. So good luck in your Kitty Hawk, which won't be able to climb to them. Yeah, that's going to be really fun. A great matchup overall, as I can think about it. So the next one is the IL-28SH. And this machine is definitely an interesting one. So first of all, we're just going to have a look at all of the stuff it can take. Now, the IL-28SH, I don't know what the SH stands for. I'm guessing it's got something to either to do with rockets or its abilities, like what it was designed for over the IL-28. But what I found with this is just an IL-28 at the same BR with so many more options to it when it came to the secondary armaments again. 192 S5K rockets and with 150mm worth of pen. So, yeah, the only issue with these rockets in itself is the way that they're mounted. They fire 2 at a time in realistic, and they fly incredibly straight. Even though the trajectory is 610 meters per second, over about 1 kilometer on the dev server, they were just flying straight. They started dropping off around 2 kilometers, and I'm talking about gravity here. So it may kind of throw you off a little bit, because you won't be used to it, but that is something that you do have to remember. On top of that, you do have some other things which are on this machine. So it starts off with 2 23mm NR23s, very similar to what we have seen before. And I just want to see, can I actually do this? Oh, that's cool. Isn't that cool? But anyway, yeah. When it comes with the 223mm, and as you can see, here are all the rockets on the side of it that we had a look at before. But the major issue with it is the addition of the extra 23s. So I tested these out, and one of the issues that the IL-28 had with these extra the extra 23s was that the external 23s, which were the modification, once again, the velocity of them was completely different to the original 23s. So this meant that aiming them is going to be hard to do, and they don't have enough penetration to be useful in a ground forces sense.